Commander stood at the viewport of the transport ship, watching the human station grow larger against the stars. She flexed her claws unconsciously, the scales along her neck ridge rising in what her people called anticipation tension. The Galactic Council had chosen her for this assignment because of her experience, her countless battles against the swarm. But now, looking at the strange cylindrical structure of Human Defense Station Olympus, she felt something she rarely experienced: uncertainty. The humans were new to the galactic stage. Their planet Earth had only been discovered 5 cycles ago when they launched their first faster-than-light vessel. The Council had watched them carefully, studied them from afar. They seemed weak by galactic standards. No natural armor like the, no combat instincts like the, no telepathic coordination like the Mesh Collective. They were soft creatures with thin skin and fragile bones who had somehow clawed their way into space through determination alone. The swarm was consuming the outer colonies. The Council needed every warrior they could find, even weak ones. The transport docked with a metallic clang that vibrated through the hull, gathered her equipment and made her way to the airlock. The doors opened with a hiss, and she stepped into a corridor that smelled strange. Not unpleasant, just different. Chemical cleaners and something else. Something organic that she could not identify. A human male waited for her. He wore a dark blue uniform with silver markings on the shoulders. His face was smooth, almost childlike compared to the battle-scarred visages of proper warriors. When he saw her, his lips curved upward in that strange human expression they called a smile. "Commander," he said, extending his hand in the human greeting gesture. "I'm Captain. Welcome to Olympus Station." Studied the hand for a moment before gripping it gently. Human bones were fragile. She had read the reports. The captain's grip was surprisingly firm, though nothing compared to a warrior's strength. "Captain," she acknowledged, "the Council sends its gratitude for your participation in the defense initiative." "We're happy to help," said, still smiling. "Come on. The briefing starts in 20 minutes. I'll show you to the command center." They walked through the corridors of the station, observed everything. The walls were lined with strange images, humans in various poses, some holding weapons, some gathered together. Words in their languages accompanied the images. She recognized some phrases from her cultural training. "Death before dishonor." "What are these?" she asked, gesturing to the images. "Unit mottos," explained. "Each military organization has its own. They help build identity and purpose." "You have many military organizations." "Dozens," he said casually. "Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Space Force, Coast Guard, plus Special Operations Divisions. We like to specialize." Neck ridge flattened in confusion. "Your species maintains multiple separate warrior castes. Does this not create conflict?" Laughed. It was a warm sound, but something about it made her scales prickle. "Sometimes, but mostly we just compete to see who's better, keeps everyone sharp." The command center was larger than she expected. Screens covered every wall, displaying tactical data, ship positions, and stellar maps. Humans moved between stations with practiced efficiency. Several turned to look at her when she entered. Their eyes were strange forward-facing like predators, with whites around the colored irises that made their gaze unsettlingly direct. "Everyone, this is Commander of the Defense Fleet," announced. "She'll be observing and coordinating with the Council forces during the upcoming operation." A human female approached. She was smaller than but moved with a dangerous grace that reminded of a hunting lizard. "Lieutenant," she introduced herself, "demolitions and close combat specialist. Good to have you here, Commander." "And this is Sergeant Minu," continued, indicating a stocky male with scars on his hands. "He leads our ground infantry teams." Minu nodded but did not smile. His eyes were hard, calculating. This one understood war, thought. This one had seen death. The briefing began with tactical displays showing the mining colony Epsilon 7, a small world rich in rare minerals. It supplied materials for ship construction across 3 sectors. Intelligence reports indicated a scout fleet was heading toward the colony, 12 ships against their combined force of 20. Standard defensive protocol, announced Commander X of the fleet, who appeared via hologram. We position our forces in orbital defense grid Delta 7. The humans will anchor the left flank. Council heavy cruisers will. No, interrupted. The hologram flickered. Silence filled the command center. Claws extended instinctively. No one interrupted a fleet commander during tactical planning. It was not done. Excuse me, X's voice was dangerously quiet. With respect, Commander, defensive positions won't work against tactics, said calmly. They'll overwhelm the grid through sheer numbers. We've studied their battle patterns. They sacrifice smaller ships to create gaps in the defense, then pour through with their main force. The grid has held against attacks for 30 cycles, X growled. And you've lost 17 colonies in that time, Lieutenant said, not rudely, just stating fact. Your defensive doctrine is designed for conventional warfare. They aren't conventional. Watched the exchange with growing unease. The humans spoke of battle with unsettling casualness, as if discussing weather patterns. There was no ritual to their words, no warrior's pride or formal challenge, just cold analysis. What do you suggest? X asked, his tone suggesting he expected nothing useful. Pressed a control and the tactical display changed. Red lines appeared, showing human ship positions scattered in seemingly random patterns around the colony. We let them think they have an opening, pull back our forward pickets. When they commit their main force, we hit them from 3 sides, concentrate fire on their command ship, cut off the head and the swarm falters. That requires your ships to absorb the initial assault, said. Your casualties would be significant. Acceptable, replied. That word hung in the air. Acceptable. Had heard many words for casualties in her warrior's life. Unavoidable, regrettable, tragic, but never acceptable. Casualties were the price of failure, the mark of poor planning. Yet this human spoke of them as if they were just another resource to spend. You would sacrifice your own people, she asked. Looked at her, and for a moment his smile faded. His eyes were still kind, but behind that kindness was something else. Something cold and calculating that made her ancient predator brain scream warnings. Commander, he said quietly, we'll sacrifice whatever is necessary to win. That's what makes us good at this. The briefing continued, but barely heard the rest. She watched the humans move through their tactical planning with mechanical efficiency. They spoke of projected losses, the way merchants discussed inventory. Lieutenants suggested ramming maneuvers if their weapons failed. Sergeant Menu proposed boarding actions on enemy vessels despite the lethal environment inside ships. They were not just willing to die, they were planning for it, building it into their strategy. For the first time since accepting this assignment, wondered if the Council had made a terrible mistake, not in recruiting humanity to fight but in bringing them into the galaxy at all. They arrived exactly when intelligence predicted, watched from the bridge of the Council cruiser Steadfast Honor as 12 hostile signatures appeared on the tactical display. Then more, and more. The count climbed to 18, then 25, then 30. They brought reinforcements, Commander X said through the comm channel. His voice carried the strain of a warrior facing worse odds than expected. All ships, maintain defensive formation Delta 7. We hold the line. Negative, his voice came through, calm as still water. All human vessels execute protocol Thermopylae. Mark your targets and engage at will. His claws dug into her console. Captain, you cannot break formation, the defensive grid. Will get us all killed, he interrupted. Trust me, Commander, or get out of our way. On the tactical display, the human ships scattered. Every military instinct possessed screamed that this was wrong. You did not break formation. You did not abandon your defensive position. These were fundamental truths of warfare, learned over thousands of cycles of galactic combat. The humans did it anyway. The fleet surged forward. Their ships were organic things, grown rather than built, with weapon ports that pulsed like infected wounds. They moved in a swarm pattern, smaller craft forming a protective shell around the larger command vessels. It was a formation designed to overwhelm defenders through sheer mass. The first human ship to make contact was a destroyer called the Inchan, watched in horror as it accelerated directly into the formation, not firing, just accelerating. "What is that ship doing?" she demanded. "Her job," Lieutenant replied from the human command channel. She was aboard one of the other vessels. Her voice was steady, almost bored. "The Inchan is executing a close-quarters engagement protocol." Close quarters in void combat was insane. Ships needed distance to maneuver, to use their weapons effectively. Getting close meant. The Inchan collided with a cruiser at ramming speed. Both ships exploded in a ball of superheated plasma. The shockwave tore through 3 nearby fighters, destroying them instantly. Where there had been 4 enemy vessels, now there was only debris. "Inchan is gone," a human voice reported over the comm. "No emotion, just fact. 97 souls aboard, they're clear for Valhalla." "Confirmed," said, "honor their sacrifice. Next wave engage pattern Sigma." Felt her stomach turn. They had just lost a ship and nearly 100 warriors, and the humans spoke of it like a successful transaction. What kind of species considered mutual destruction a victory? The battle fully engaged. Human ships darted through the formation like predators attacking a herd. They targeted the command vessels, ignoring the smaller fighters that swarmed them. Weapons fire lit up the void. A human frigate took 3 direct hits and kept firing until its hull breached and it died in silence. "All Council ships advance now," X ordered. "Support the human attack." The steadfast Honor moved forward with the rest of the Council fleet. They fired on the ships from optimal range, providing covering fire while maintaining safe distance. This was proper warfare, calculated, controlled. The humans fought like they were insane. Watched as a human corvette called the matched velocity with a destroyer and latched onto its hull with magnetic grapples. "What is that ship doing?" "Boarding action," Sergeant Minu's voice came through. "That's my team, we're going in." "You cannot board a vessel," said. "The internal atmosphere is toxic. The biological defenses will." "Yeah, we know," Minu interrupted. "That's why we brought the heavy suits and the charges." On her tactical screen, saw human life signs moving inside the destroyer. They were fighting inside an alien vessel filled with acidic atmosphere and biological weapons. It was suicide. 3 minutes later, the destroyer exploded from within. The disengaged just before the blast, its hull scorched but intact. "Minu report," ordered. "Lost 6, got the reactor," Minu replied. He was breathing hard. "We're clear." "Good work. Medical teams, prepare for incoming wounded." The battle continued for 2 hours. Watched human crews perform maneuvers that would be considered reckless by any Council commander. A cruiser called the used its damaged reactor as a weapon, deliberately overloading it next to a cluster of ships. A destroyer named the drew fire from 5 enemy vessels to cover a Council transport's retreat, taking hits until its shields failed and its hull breached. But their insanity worked. The humans focused all their fire on the command ship. They ignored everything else, accepting losses from the smaller craft in order to eliminate the primary target. Lieutenant's ship released a cloud of missiles that seemed to move with intelligence, weaving through defensive fire to strike critical systems. "Antimatter warheads armed," reported, targeting their central cortex. "If this works, the whole swarm will lose coordination." "And if it doesn't?" asked. "Then we try something else," said. "We always have a backup plan." The missiles struck. The command ship shuddered as explosions tore through its organic structure. Its bioelectric signature flickered and died. Within seconds, the entire fleet began to falter. Without central coordination, they reverted to simple attack patterns. The Council ships, finally understanding the human strategy, concentrated their fire and began systematically destroying the confused enemy vessels. 20 minutes later it was over. The fleet was scattered debris. The colony was saved. The cost was displayed on screen in cold numbers. The Council fleet had lost 3 ships with a total of 230 warriors, standard losses for this type of engagement, acceptable by any military standard. The human fleet had lost 7 ships, 4 destroyers, 2 frigates, and 1 cruiser. Total casualties, 1,218 dead, another 300 wounded. 40% of the human force was gone. All vessels, status report, ordered. His ship, the Valiant, had taken heavy damage. Atmosphere was venting from 3 sections. Its main weapons were offline, but its voice remained steady, professional. The reports came in, ship after ship, listing their dead and wounded with mechanical precision. Private, the combat medic, reported 17 wounded on the Alone. Ensign confirmed this entire crew had perished when they overloaded their reactor, and then said something that made blood run cold. "Good work, everyone. That's a victory." Victory, he called it a victory. Over 1,000 dead, and he called it a victory. "You lost 40% of your force," said. She could not keep the shock from her voice. "How can you possibly consider this a success?" Turned to look at her. His face was tired. There was sadness in his eyes, but also something else, something satisfied. "We saved the colony," he said simply. 15 million people alive who would be dead. The lost their command structure, which means they'll be less organized for months, and we proved that their tactics can be beaten. He paused. "Yeah, Commander, that's a victory. But your people knew what they signed up for." Finished. Every single one of them volunteered to be here. They understood the risks, and they paid the price so others could live. He smiled then, that strange human smile. "That's what makes us good at this, Commander. We're not afraid to pay the price." Looked at the tactical display, at the debris fields where human ships used to be, at the life sign indicators that had gone dark. She thought of the Inchan's captain deliberately ramming an enemy vessel, of Sergeant Minu's team boarding a toxic alien ship knowing they might not return, of this crew turning their own ship into a bomb. She had fought in many battles, seen countless warriors die for their causes, but she had never seen anyone plan for their own death so efficiently. The humans did not just accept casualties, they weaponized them. They built their tactics around the assumption that people would die, and they used those deaths to maximum effect. It was brilliant. It was horrifying. And somewhere deep in her ancient reptilian brain, an instinct screamed at her that she was looking at something that should not exist. A species that combined intelligence with suicidal courage, that could smile and laugh and show kindness, while simultaneously calculating how to use their own bodies as weapons. The humans were celebrating now. She could hear it through the comm channels, cheering, laughing, mourning their dead while simultaneously toasting their victory. They held both grief and joy in the same moment without contradiction. Shut off her console and went to her quarters. She needed to process what she had witnessed. She needed to understand how a species could be so terrifyingly efficient at warfare while remaining so seemingly warm and friendly. But most of all, she needed to file a report to the Council. Because for the first time in her long military career, she was not afraid of the enemy. She was afraid of her allies. The recovery period lasted 3 weeks. The human fleet needed time to repair damaged vessels and integrate replacement crews. Used this time to study the humans more carefully. What she learned did not comfort her. She found Doctor in one of the station's research labs. The human female was examining biological samples through a scanner, her face lit by the soft blue glow of the display. When entered, looked up and smiled. "Commander, come in. I was hoping we'd get a chance to talk." "You are a medical researcher," said. It was not a question. She had reviewed the crew files. "Actually," corrected, "I study alien life forms, including the when we can get samples." She gestured to the scanner. "They're fascinating organisms, complete hive integration. Individual units have almost no independent thought." "They are a plague," said flatly. "Well, yes, from our perspective," agreed. "But from a biological standpoint, they're remarkably well adapted to their niche, resource consumption and rapid reproduction. It's actually similar to how humans spread across Earth, if you think about it." Scales rippled in discomfort. "You compare your species to the—" "In some ways," pulled up a display showing a rotating model of Earth. "Our planet was harsh, predators everywhere, limited resources. Early humans had to compete with species that were stronger, faster, better armed by nature. We had no claws, no venom, no armor. We were soft and slow. Yet you survived." "We did more than survive. We conquered," zoomed in on the planet's surface. "We hunted animals to extinction. We changed the climate. We fought each other over every piece of land. By the time we reached space, there were 8 billion of us, and we'd pushed dozens of species into extinction just by existing." She looked at. "We're very good at surviving, Commander. Too good, maybe." "The Council studied your history," said. "The wars, the genocides, the weapons that could destroy your entire world." "Nuclear weapons," nodded. "We built enough of them to kill ourselves 100 times over. And you know what's funny? We never used most of them. We just kept building them, making them better, more efficient at killing. It was like a game to see who could threaten total extinction more credibly." Sat down, her legs suddenly unsteady. "Why?" "Because that's what humans do," said simply. "We find new and better ways to kill. It's in our nature. We're persistence hunters, Commander. On Earth, we used to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We'd track wounded animals for days, never giving up. That's what we are. We don't stop. We don't surrender. We just keep pushing until we win or we're dead." The conversation left disturbed. She found herself walking through the station's memorial hall later that day. The walls were covered with names, thousands of them, humans who had died in various conflicts over the centuries. Major found her there. The Special Forces commander moved silently despite his size. He stopped beside her, looking at the names. "Impressive, isn't it?" he said. "Every war we've ever fought, every person we've ever lost, we keep the names, remember them." "There are so many," said. Yeah, his voice was quiet. "We're good at war. Been practicing for about 10,000 years, give or take." 10,000? His neck ridge flattened in shock. "Your species has been at war for 10,000 cycles." "At least, probably longer. We've got evidence of organized warfare going back to the Stone Age," pointed to a section of the wall. "These are from World War I, 20 million dead. Then World War II right after, 80 million that time, Korea, Vietnam, Middle East conflicts, African wars, South American revolutions." He kept listing them, his voice steady. "We fought over religion, over resources, over ideas, over land we couldn't even use. We fought each other with rocks, then swords, then guns, then missiles, then nukes. How did you not destroy yourselves?" "We came close, several times," turned to look at her. "But we didn't, you know why? Because even when we were trying to kill each other, we were smart enough to know total destruction helped nobody. So we invented rules, Geneva Conventions, international law, treaties. We decided which weapons were too horrible to use, even in war." "I do not understand. If you have rules for warfare, why do you fight so brutally?" Smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Because the rules are about how we fight, not whether we fight or how hard. When humans go to war, Commander, we commit everything. Total war, we call it. Every resource, every person, every weapon that's legal to use. We don't do half measures." That night could not sleep. She kept reviewing footage from the battle, watching the Incheon ram the cruiser again and again. seeing Sergeant Minu's team board the enemy destroyer knowing it was likely suicide. The humans in those ships had chosen to die, voluntarily, without hesitation. She requested to meet with Minu the next day. She found him in the training center, running through combat simulations with his replacement squad members. New faces, filling in for the 6 who had died in the boarding action. "Commander," Minu greeted her. Sweat dripped from his face, but he was smiling. "Want to join us? We're practicing zero-gravity combat." "I wish to understand something," said. "Your team, the 6 who died, you knew the boarding action would likely kill some of you." "Yeah," Minu's smile faded slightly. "Boarding a ship in the middle of combat, suicide mission by any reasonable standard. Yet you volunteered, they volunteered." "Of course." Minu sat down on a bench, grabbing a water container. "Look, Commander, here's how humans think about it. We're all going to die someday. That's just fact. We live maybe 80, 90 years if we're lucky. So the question isn't whether we die, it's what we accomplish before we do. You weaponize your mortality." "I guess you could say that." Minu drank deeply. "Those 6 who died, they saved 15 million colonists. They took out a destroyer. They helped win a battle that could have gone either way. That's a good death, Commander. That's a meaningful death. That's the kind of death that makes other humans remember your name." He stood and gestured to his new squad members. "Every one of these Marines knows they might die tomorrow, but they're here anyway because humans don't just fight for ourselves. We fight for each other, for our families, for our species, for the ideals we believe in." He looked at directly. "You want to know what makes humans dangerous? It's not our weapons or our tactics. It's that we've spent 10,000 years learning how to die well." That evening, Private invited to join some of the crew for what they called a memorial drink. It was a human tradition, she explained. When someone died, their friends gathered to share stories and remember them. The gathering was in one of the station's recreational areas. 20 humans sat in a circle, passing around containers of alcohol. They laughed. They cried. They told stories about the dead as if they were still alive. "Remember when accidentally vented the bathroom while he was in it?" someone said. Everyone laughed. "Or when hacked the mess hall system to play that stupid song on loop for 6 hours? More laughter. Watched in confusion. These humans had lost friends days ago, comrades they had fought beside, yet they celebrated them with joy and laughter. "You seem confused," Commander said softly. She sat down next to. "This must look strange to you. You mourn by celebrating." "We celebrate their lives," corrected. "Yes, they're gone. Yes, we miss them, but they lived. They mattered, they made a difference, so we honor that. We remember the good times, not just the end." "But does it not hurt?" "Of course it hurts." Tears ran down his face even as she smiled. "It hurts like hell, but pain is part of being alive. Love is part of being alive. Loss is part of being alive. We don't run from it, we embrace it, because that's what makes us human." Later, someone pulled out a musical instrument and began to play. Others sang. The words were in an old Earth language that did not fully understand, but the emotion was clear. Songs of war, songs of loss, songs of victory, songs of sacrifice. Left before the gathering ended, she returned to her quarters and recorded her observations in her personal log, but her hands shook as she entered the data. She had thought she understood war. She had fought in countless battles across dozens of worlds. She had seen death, caused death, accepted death as the price of conflict. But the humans were different. They had industrialized death, romanticized it, built an entire culture around the nobility of sacrifice. They taught their children stories of heroes who died gloriously. They created art about war. They sang songs about battles thousands of years old. They were a species that had been at war with itself for its entire history, and they had emerged from that crucible with the ability to combine love and brutality in the same breath. Looked at her reflection in the dark viewport. She saw her own scales, her claws, her predator's eyes. She was a warrior species, evolved for combat. But watching humans, she realized something terrifying. They had evolved for war. Humans had invented it. The emergency council meeting was held via hologram. Representatives from 20 species appeared in the command center, their faces showing various expressions of fear and anger. Stood to the side, observing as the council leadership debated their survival. They had done the impossible. They had bypassed the outer defenses and launched a full invasion force toward Thera's Prime, the council's administrative. 4 billion lives, the center of galactic civilization, and the fleet numbered in the hundreds. "We must negotiate," High Counselor OK said. His species, were diplomats by nature. Surely there is a way to appease them, to redirect their hunger elsewhere. "They cannot be negotiated with," Commander X growled. "They are a swarm, they consume. That is their nature." "Then we evacuate," another counselor suggested. "We can relocate the government, build again elsewhere." "In the time it takes to evacuate 4 billion people, they will already be there," Captain said. He stood with the other human officers, his uniform crisp despite the late hour. "You have maybe 72 hours before they arrive at Thera's Prime. You can evacuate maybe 10 million in that time. The rest die." The chamber fell silent. The mathematics were brutal but accurate. "Then what do you propose, human?" OK asked. "Your species seems to have opinions on everything." Exchanged glances with Fleet Admiral. The Admiral was an older human, his hair gray, his face lined with decades of command. He nodded once. "We have a plan," said. "Operation Acheron, but you're not going to like it." He activated the tactical display. It showed a route from human space to Thera's Prime. Red lines indicated ship movements. Numbers scrolled across the bottom, calculating logistics. "The fleet is moving as one massive force," explained. "They're protecting their hive ship at the center. Standard doctrine would be to engage them head-on with everything we have, but we don't have enough firepower to break through that kind of defense." "So we are doomed," someone said quietly. "No," pressed another control. The display changed, showing a different kind of vessels. Civilian transports, cargo haulers, colony ships. "We use bait. We send civilian vessels on an intercept course, unarmed. No weapons, minimal shields, just flying directly at the fleet." Claws extended involuntarily. "You cannot be serious. That would be a massacre." "Yes," agreed calmly. "Though we'll detect them. They'll see easy targets and move to consume them. It's their nature. They can't resist." "While they're distracted with the civilian ships," Lieutenant Bora continued, "our warships use the diversion to approach the hive ship from another angle. We hit it with everything we have. Antimatter warheads, kinetic impactors, focused energy weapons. We kill the hive ship and the entire fleet loses coordination." The council chamber exploded with objections. Voices overlapped in a dozen languages, all saying the same thing. It was insane. It was murder. It was sacrificing innocent lives to save others. "How many?" High Counselor OK asked quietly. "How many civilian vessels would you need?" 200, Admiral said. "Crewed by volunteers. We estimate 30,000 people total." 30,000 people to save 4 billion, OK said. "And these would be volunteers." "Yes," confirmed. "We're not monsters, Counselor. We don't force people to die, we ask them. And humans have a habit of saying yes." The debate continued for hours. The council was split. Some argued that using civilians as bait violated every principle of civilized warfare. Others pointed out that doing nothing guaranteed 4 billion deaths. Eventually, a vote was called. The council rejected the plan. 15 votes against, 12 in favor, not enough support. "Then we're authorized to proceed on our own authority," Admiral said. "Under emergency military protocol, human forces can act independently to protect council interests." "You cannot," OK began. We can and we will, interrupted. With or without council approval, this is happening. The transmission ended. The council representatives flickered out one by one, leaving only the human command staff and. You would defy the council? Asked. To save 4 billion lives, yeah, said, we would. Within 6 hours, the call went out across human space. The message was simple: volunteers needed for high-risk mission. No weapons experience required. Likely casualty rate, 100%. Thought maybe a few hundred would respond. Idealistic fools or people with nothing to lose. 50,000 people applied within the first day. She watched from the command center as Lieutenant Bora processed the applications. The intelligence officer worked with mechanical efficiency, sorting through profiles and selecting candidates. How can you do this? Asked. You are sending these people to die. Bora looked up. Her eyes were tired but steady. I'm giving them a choice. Every single person who applied knows what this mission is. They read the briefing, they understand the odds, and they volunteered anyway. But why would they? Because they're human, Bora said simply. And humans believe that how you die matters just as much as how you live. The selected volunteers began arriving at the staging area, watched them board the civilian vessels. They ranged in age from 18 to 70, men and women, some alone, some with friends. They carried small bags of personal possessions. They smiled and joked with each other as if boarding transports for a routine colony run. One young human, maybe 20 years old, noticed watching. He walked over, his face bright with nervous energy. Commander Wright, he said, I'm pilot. Well, civilian pilot, never been in combat before. You volunteered for this mission, said. Why? Shrugged. My family lives on Thera's Prime. My parents moved there when they got jobs with the council. If they take the planet, they die. So I can sit here and watch them die, or I can do something about it. He smiled. Easy choice, really. You will die. Probably, agreed. But they'll live. And someday, when they're old and safe, they'll tell stories about the people who saved them. That's enough for me. He boarded his ship. The hatch closed. Watched the transport move into formation with hundreds of others. 30,000 volunteers. 30,000 humans who chose death with purpose over life with guilt. The fleet launched 12 hours later. Was aboard the Valiant with captain and his crew. She watched the tactical display as 200 civilian vessels moved toward the fleet, followed at a distance by human warships. All civilian vessels, this is Admiral, the fleet commander's voice came through the comm. You are the bravest souls I have ever had the honor to command. Your sacrifice will be remembered for generations. Humanity thanks you. The galaxy thanks you. When you reach the other side, save a seat for the rest of us. Godspeed. Responses came back, some serious, some joking. One pilot sang a song, another recited poetry. His voice came through, young and uncertain but determined. See you on the other side, Admiral. The civilian fleet entered the detection range. The swarm reacted immediately. Dozens of organic ships broke formation, turning toward the easy prey. More followed. The hive ship's protective screen thinned as vessels moved to consume the civilian targets. All warships engage, ordered. Make their sacrifice count. The human warships accelerated, coming at the hive ship from 3 directions. They fired everything. Missiles streaked through space. Energy weapons carved burning lines across the void. The hive ship's defenses tried to respond, but too many of its escorts had left to chase the civilian fleet. On the tactical display, watched the civilian vessels wink out one by one. Each light that disappeared represented a ship, represented people, represented humans who had chosen to die so others could live. The first civilian vessel was consumed by fighters in seconds, then the second, then 10 at once. The tore through them with savage efficiency, organic weapons ripping apart civilian hulls designed for cargo, not combat. But they had done their job. The hive ship was exposed. Human warships poured fire into the massive organic structure. Antimatter warheads detonated deep within its flesh. The hive ship shuddered. Its bioelectric signals flickered and died. The fleet lost cohesion immediately. Without central coordination, they became simple animals, dangerous but predictable. Council warships, waiting in reserve, moved in to finish them. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it ended, the invasion force was destroyed. Thera's Prime was saved. 4 billion lives continued. The cost was displayed on screen. 200 civilian vessels destroyed, 30,000 dead, plus another 12 human warships lost in the assault. Total human casualties, 31,547. In the command center, the humans worked in silence, updating logs, filing reports, processing the dead. No one celebrated, no one smiled. They had won, but the price showed on every face. Captain stood at the viewport, looking out at the debris field, approached him slowly. "You sacrificed 30,000 of your own people," she said quietly. "They weren't sacrificed," replied. "They volunteered. Every single one of them chose to be there." "Is that supposed to make it better?" No, his voice was heavy. "It makes it worse because we didn't force them, we just asked, and they said yes. That's the burden we carry, Commander. Not that we sent them to die, but that they trusted us enough to go." He turned to look at her. His eyes were red, but no tears fell. "You wanted to know what makes humans dangerous. This is it. We're willing to die, and we're even more willing to watch our friends die for something we believe in. That's the terrible truth about humanity. We can love someone with all our heart and still send them into death if the cause is right." Had no response. She returned to her quarters and began her report to the council, but her hands shook so badly she had to stop. She had witnessed many horrors in her military career, but nothing compared to watching 30,000 people fly willingly into death, and nothing compared to the humans who had asked them to do it while shedding no tears. 6 months passed. The war was ending. They had retreated to the outer rim, their numbers depleted, their coordination broken. The galaxy was slowly returning to normal. Trade routes reopened. Colonies began rebuilding. The council spoke of peace. Had spent those months finishing her report. It was comprehensive, detailed, and honest. She described human tactics, their willingness to sacrifice, their terrifying efficiency at warfare. But she also described their kindness, their humor, their genuine care for each other. The report painted a complete picture of humanity, for better or worse. She received a message from Captain on the morning she planned to transmit the report. A simple invitation to the decommissioning ceremony for the UNSC Valiant. The ship had taken too much damage during the final battle. It would be stripped for parts and retired from service. Accepted, she had fought alongside this crew. She owed them her presence at their ship's funeral. The ceremony was held in one of the station's large hangar bays. Hundreds of humans gathered, dressed in formal uniforms. The Valiant was visible through the atmospheric shield, floating in space like a wounded beast. Its hull was with weapon impacts. Entire sections had been repaired so many times the patches formed layers like scar tissue. Admiral gave the eulogy. He spoke of the ship's history, the battles it had won, the lives it had saved. He listed the names of those who had died aboard her. It took almost 20 minutes to read them all. Then Captain stepped forward. He placed his hand on a ceremonial plaque bearing the ship's name. "The Valiant served with honor," he said. "She brought us home when we thought we'd never make it. She protected us when we were vulnerable. She was more than metal and machinery. She was family." He paused. "Fair winds and following seas, old friend." After the ceremony approached, "Commander, walk with me." They moved through the station's corridors, passing through sections had come to know well over the months. She noticed small changes. New crew members replacing the fallen. Fresh paint over repaired walls. Life continuing despite loss. "I wanted to thank you," said, "for staying with us these months, for trying to understand us. I am still not certain I do understand, admitted. That's fair, smiled slightly. We're complicated, but then so is everyone, right? They reached an observation deck. Through the viewport could see Earth in the distance. The human, blue and green and white, hanging in space like a jewel. Beautiful, isn't it? Said. Hard to believe such a peaceful-looking place produced a species like us. Captain, I must ask you something, said. She had been building to this question for weeks. Was it all calculated? The sacrifices, the seemingly reckless tactics, was any of it genuine, or was it all theater designed to intimidate? Was quiet for a long moment. Then he gestured to a bench near the viewport. They sat. You want to know if we're cold-blooded calculators pretending to have emotions, he said, or emotional beings who happen to be good at war? Yes. The answer is both, said, and that's what makes humans so dangerous. He looked at her directly. Everything we did, Commander, was genuine. The grief, the determination, the willingness to sacrifice, all of it was real. We really did mourn our dead. We really were afraid. We really did care about saving those lives. But we also calculated every move, continued. The Inchan's ramming attack. We'd run simulations on that tactic hundreds of times. We knew exactly how much damage it would cause and what it would cost. Minu's boarding action. We'd practiced that maneuver in training for months. Operation Acheron. We'd had that plan in development since before we even joined the Council. Felt her scales go rigid. You planned for civilian sacrifice before you even knew you would need it. We planned for everything, said quietly. That's what makes humans good at warfare, Commander. We can feel deep emotions and still think tactically. We can love our comrades and still send them to die. We can mourn our losses and still calculate whether they were worth it. He paused. Most species can't do that. They're either emotional or logical. Humans are both all the time without contradiction. That is horrifying. I know, his voice was sad. Believe me, Commander, we know, we scare ourselves sometimes, but it's what we are. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We had to be smart enough to outsmart predators and emotional enough to work together in tribes. That combination made us what we are. Persistence hunters who never give up. Social creatures who value the group over the individual. Tool users who can turn anything into a weapon. Ensign approached them carrying a data pad. Captain, you asked for the psychological evaluation records. They're ready. Thank you, Ensign. Took the pad and handed it to. You should read this. Looked at the data. It was a psychological profile of her, dating back to the day she arrived at the station. You have been monitoring my mental state. Yes, said without shame. The ship's AI tracked your reactions, your body language, your words. We knew from the first week that you were terrified of us. We knew it disturbed you to watch us fight. We knew you were having nightmares. And you said nothing. What would we have said? Asked. We are terrifying, Commander, that's the point. We wanted you to see what humans are capable of. We wanted you to understand what we bring to the galaxy, not just our weapons or our ships, but our nature, our willingness to do what others won't. Doctor appeared from around a corner, not coincidentally realized. This was planned. We needed the galaxy to understand us, said, joining them. We're new here. We're weak compared to some species. We don't have natural weapons or armor, but we have something else. We have determination. We have creativity. And we have a willingness to pay any price for what we believe in. So you weaponized my fear, said. We gave you an honest look at who we are, corrected. Everything you saw was real. We just made sure you saw all of it. The kindness and the brutality, the emotions and the calculations, the love and the willingness to sacrifice what we love. Major stepped out of a doorway ahead. Sergeant Minu emerged from another corridor. Lieutenant appeared on the observation deck's upper level. They had all been waiting, all been part of this. You used me, said. Her voice was not angry, just tired. We used your assignment, acknowledged. The Council sent you to evaluate us. We made sure you saw a complete picture, one that you would take back to them." He stood. "What will your report say, Commander?" Looked at each of them. These humans who had fought beside her, who had shared their food and their stories, who had mourned their dead while calculating how to use those deaths to maximum effect. "It will say that humanity is the most dangerous species I have ever encountered," she said slowly. "Not because of your weapons, not because of your tactics, but because you combine love with lethality in ways no other species can match. You can care deeply about someone and still send them to die. You can mourn your losses and still consider them acceptable. You can smile and laugh while planning acts of war that would disturb any rational being." She stood facing directly. "It will say that the Council made a mistake, not in recruiting humanity to fight but in thinking we could control what you would become. You are not warriors. You are not soldiers. You are predators who learn to cooperate, and now that cooperation extends beyond your own species." "Is that a compliment or a warning?" asked. "Both," said. "Always both, because that is what humanity is, a paradox, a contradiction, a species that should not be able to exist but does." She transmitted her report that night. The Council would read her words and make their own decisions. Some would argue for restricting human expansion. Others would welcome their military support. The debates would last for cycles. But was done. She requested transfer away from human space, far away, to a quiet sector where she could process what she had learned. Her final log entry was simple. "I have fought beside many species. I have witnessed countless warriors. I have seen bravery and cowardice, honor and treachery, victory and defeat. But only once have I felt true terror. It was not fighting against humanity. They are too pragmatic for pointless violence, too strategic for random aggression. It was not fighting beside humanity, though their methods disturb the soul. It was realizing what humanity could become. They are persistence hunters who never give up, social creatures who value the group, tool users who can weaponize anything, including their own mortality, tacticians who can calculate while feeling, empaths who can love while killing. They are the perfect predators. And they have decided, for now, to be our friends. I pray to the ancient stars that we never give them reason to become anything else, because I have seen what they do to their enemies. And I have seen what they do to themselves in service of a cause they believe in. If humanity ever decides the galaxy is prey, there will be nothing that can stop them, not because they are strong, but because they will never, ever stop. That is the true terror of humanity. Not their capacity for violence, but their capacity for purpose." Left human space 3 days later. She never returned, but she watched, always watched, monitoring humanity's expansion into the galaxy with the wariness of someone who had seen the truth behind their smiles. The humans continued as they always had, building, trading, making friends, sharing their culture, laughing and loving and living their short, bright lives. But everyone who read's report knew the truth. Humanity was kind until you gave them reason not to be. And the galaxy would never forget what they were capable of when given a reason.